Mm-hmm. Welcome back, Algorators. SL, hello. Daniel Cameron, hello. Tafia, hello. Brenda O, hello. Bird Try, or is that Try? Hello. Welcome back, everybody. And before we get started, we want to wish Cassie Ventura congratulations on the birth of your third child, but your first son. Welcome to the world on May 27th. Does that make him a Gemini? Because if that makes him a Gemini, I'm a Gemini. We're in Gemini season, and that child is already set up to be great. Anyway, all right, everybody. Congratulations, Cassie, though, for real. All right, everybody. Imagine a music mogul at the height of his power. There were private jets, global hits, A-list parties, but beneath the empire was a shadow network of alleged abuse, intimidation, and control. Tonight, here in the Court of Public Opinion, we're going to turn its full attention to one man, Sean P. Diddy Combs. What was once whispered in the corridors is now echoed in the courtrooms. What we used to dismiss as rumors now have names, faces, and guess what else? Sworn testimony. In this 60-minute special, we're not speculating. We're examining sworn statements, legal rulings, and shocking accusations that spanned over a decade. From alleged sexual assault to arson, kidnapping to psychological warfare, the testimony is chilling, and we're going to hear some of it tonight. But the question remains, at least in my head, is this a case of a powerful man falling prey to cancel culture, or the long overdue reckoning of a system that protected them way too long? All right, everybody, this is Celebrity Court of Public Opinion, and court is now in session. Let's get into it by first introducing our legal beagles that are joining me tonight. First off, always, is that fiery civil attorney, Shatan Turner. Shatan Turner, welcome back to Celebrity Court.
Hey, Your Honor, glad to be back. Hey, Algorators, let's do it.
Lauren Knowles, thank you for dropping in here. Pink Love, welcome. All right, also joining Miss Turner on this powerful panel is author and attorney Jason Weiss, author of Shit They Never Taught You in Law School, which the second edition is out. Jason Weiss, welcome to Celebrity Court.
Thank you, Your Honor. Excited to be here. And yes, the second edition hit Amazon today, so go get a copy. And some of you listeners, a surprise, some have already been put in the mail for you.
All right, awesome. Tell us again on Amazon, how can we find it, and what's the name of the new book?
It's called More Shit They Never Taught You in Law School. And if you look under that title or Jason S. Weiss, it'll pop right up.
All right, you heard it right here, guys. More Shit They Didn't Teach You in Law School, or Jason S. Weiss on Amazon. Be sure to get over to Amazon and get that book, especially if you're interested in going to law school. Last but not least, we have the humorist at law, Sean Carter. Sean Carter, get in here. Tell me something so I can laugh.
No, I don't really have anything. But I do have a book to promote, though. I'm writing a new book, a recipe, a Diddy cookbook, because that fool likes applesauce on his hamburgers. And that's actually get a whole book worth.
What is applesauce on your hamburger?
That was in testimony, so I know it was important. That's why they brought the RICO case, because that's just nasty.
So the baby oil and all that's not
nasty.
Forget
that. It's the applesauce on the hamburgers.
It's nasty. All right, everybody, let's get it started. So today we're going to talk about what we believe to be 5 key things that has happened in the trial this week that could be both damaging, but also could be good as well. It depends on whose side of the aisle you're on. First up, we have the testimony from the former assistant, Mia. In one of the most emotionally jarring testimonies of the trial so far, a former assistant using the pseudonym Mia took the stand. She alleges she was sexually assaulted by Combs during her employment from 2009 to 2017. Jeez whiz, what? That's 18 years. But that wasn't all. She also claims to have witnessed him brutally attacking Cassie Ventura, leaving her bleeding. Perhaps most disturbing, though, was Mia alleges Combs broke into Kid Cudi's home in 2011, driven by jealousy. This testimony doesn't just simply imply misconduct. It paints a portrait of control, vigilance, and unchecked violence. All right, I'm going to throw this to you, Attorney Carter, real quick. How does a court evaluate claims from a synonymous witnesses, especially in high-profile cases?
There's not any difference between that and a witness that you have their full name, etc. They were there. They made their testimony. We don't need to know their name.
Oh, so that's it. It's no big deal.
No big deal.
Okay, so she's probably doing this to protect her. I guess she's afraid that she might get beat up or something. Like
she might, their job,
retaliation, fear.
Yeah.
Okay, but how is that protected? But when she has to show up in court and everybody sees her in court and they draw the pictures of her.
Well, remember they drew the pictures, and that picture, some of these pictures we're going to see, I don't know who that is. That could be me and half the pictures. All right. Seriously, look at that picture there. I can't tell. She can go to work tomorrow. She could be me. I don't even know. And so I think really it's for her, maybe protection, but I don't really think so because Diddy's people know who she is. They can find her. All right. I think she's trying to protect her name. And I saw something recently, Monica Lewinsky. She's really mad. One of the things is because her name got out there, and from then the rest of her life, she was Monica Lewinsky. She doesn't want to be Lewinsky here. And so she's like, hey, you'll forget about this trial, you forget about these pictures, but you'll never forget my name if I put it out there. I'm gonna keep it in the DL.
Got it. Okay, I'm gonna throw to you, Shataran, real quick, because what we know is that she is claiming that on multiple times she was raped, right? And also on multiple,
The R word?
Yes.
The T word.
I said great. Yeah, the R word.
Great.
And she also claims that on multiple times she witnessed, because she was a friend of Cassie's, his physical abuse to her. What legal weight does witnessing physical abuse carry if the victim, in her testimony? Like, where does the prosecutor use that in building the case in this instance?
Witnesses are used to enhance credibility of other testimony. So to the extent that people did not believe Cassie, although Cassie's testimony was really supported by the video, but they're just further reinforcing it by having people testify that they witnessed what happened to Cassie.
Got it. All right, Attorney Weiss, what challenges arises when witnesses recount older incidents, especially hers date back to 2000, I think she said on the stand, 9, 10, 11?
It has to do with how far back people remember, 12, 13, 14 years ago. I mean, I have trouble remembering what I did yesterday or Tuesday. Tuesday I was on the air with you all, so I remember that. But the longer things wait and the longer it takes, the less credible their memory is. Now, there are ways to fix that, such as, hey, I wrote in a journal in my diary that I've been writing in since I'm 13. So hang on one second. Oh yeah, this, and you have that. But normally the longer something you look backwards, the less credible and the less of a recollection that they'll have.
Got it. All right. To all the attorneys on the panel, can a pattern of behavior like what Mia describes, is that what the prosecution is laying their hat on in establishing motive or character, like what Diddy's character is in court?
It's definitely part of it, right? You could use that to show that it wasn't a one-time thing. This is a pattern of behavior. This is something that he normally did when he had, like Attorney Carter just said, when he ate hamburgers, what did he put on it? Applesauce. Every time he traveled, he needed applesauce on his hamburgers. That's a pattern. So if you had an observation that you saw Diddy out eating a hamburger, you can make the inference that he had applesauce on it.
All right, so let me ask a question that no one else is going to ask. And people, when I ask these questions, please don't think that this is what I think, but it is questions that people have. And as the judge, I have to make sure that the public's opinion is heard as well. It may not be my opinion, but it's definitely the opinion of someone. How credible is an assistant who's been working there, right? In public opinion, in courts, I'm sure it's probably a different process. You can speak on any of this, but how credible is it? I thought something that was very interesting in this is that she said that she was raped over 10 times, but she kept going back And she kept going back, and she kept going back. And one time he forced her to perform oral acts on her. And they asked, why didn't you stop? Why didn't you say no? And her response was, who's going to say no to Diddy? Tell me, how credible is that for an assistant, right? For an assistant that for 17 years, over the course of a decade of those 17 years, she was raped, but she kept coming back.
I think you have to keep this entire thing in context. This is not a case about a regular Joe with a regular job harassing people who worked for him. Okay. This is a case of one of the most powerful men in the entertainment industry and the world. Like, think about it. Diddy was hot, right? Like, now we forget about it because Beyonce and Jay-Z have become the king and queen of hip hop. But Diddy was out there by himself, especially after they put Suge Knight in prison. You know, he was the one, right? And so the notion of perceived power. Now, he had a lot of power, but if you worked for him, you probably thought he had even more because he's on TV. He got a key to the city from Eric Adams. He's getting awards. Like, I don't know if he was with the Pope, but I wouldn't be surprised. He was everywhere. He was hanging out with Donald Trump before Donald Trump was president, but Donald Trump was still running New York, right? If you were in a situation with him and he was abusing you, you could very easily think, I can't get out, right? And then when you add on to this, all of the things we've heard in the trial, he's getting people's parents to give him money. He's threatening their livelihood, threatening their lives, showing up at Kid Cudi's house, traumatizing animals, opening Christmas presents completely unhinged, it seems like. The notion that anybody could just leave, I think we need to dispense with that because this wasn't just a man, this was a personality.
Okay, what do you think about that, Attorney Carter? Because I'm a man. I ain't gonna let no other man rape me 10, 11, 12 times over the course of 12 years when I didn't want it. And I don't care. I mean, I'm an assistant. I'm only gonna make so much money. I need help understanding.
No, and well, here's the thing is you guys are making the two arguments that are exactly going to be made at closing arguments. Shaitan's argument is exactly the arguments going to be made by the prosecution, not just with regard to Mia here, but also with regard to Cassie, because that's really the big question. Why didn't Cassie leave, right? And the exact arguments that Shaitan made are going to be the ones that the prosecution makes. And the one that you're asking, Your Honor, is exactly what the defense is going to say. We don't believe it. Don't believe this really happened because if it did, nobody would have allowed it to go on for 10 years, right?
Right.
The jury's going to have to decide between those two issues, right? I think that the important thing with regard to and I'm calling her Mia, but that's the name that's been used there, the pseudonym, is that her testimony was important for two reasons. One, it showed that he has this level of control and coercion, right? That he will go out of his way to make people do things that once again, shores up Cassie's testimony. And the second thing, this is the most important thing I thought, was that she testified that she had to clean up and prepare for the freak-offs. Remember, this is a RICO case. All these bad things that Diddy did, somebody needs to have helped him do it, right? And so she's given that corroborating evidence that says, somebody help me. I had to help him do this stuff, right? And the fact that, that sort of lends credit to the idea that the whole organization was just existing so that Diddy can get his freak off on.
Jason, as an attorney who has tried these type of cases, when you have a whole bunch of females testifying and saying that I couldn't get away, I couldn't stop it, I couldn't. If you were the defense, what would your mind be right now?
My mind would be, if I were the defense, it would be, look, there were yes, during certain times that person couldn't leave. Mia couldn't leave. But once Mia went home for the night, there was nothing preventing Mia from not coming back to work the next day, right. Not getting on a plane and leaving, not going to,
the police,
the authorities.
Okay. All right. Keep going.
So remember, I I'm sorry.
Well, no. He
No.
asked me.
Charges.
He asked me
What?
if
I said from the defense point of view, meaning the person that's defending Diddy.
correct.
What would be going through his mind? What would be the conversations he's having with the courts when he gets his chance? And Daniel Cameron, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Thank you. That might have been the second one, but thank you. Sorry, I skipped over that. Thank you. Go ahead, attorney.
No, so it would basically be, look, you have the opportunity. You're not locked away. You are not in a room. You're not in my home. You leave after a freak off, after whatever it is. You leave, you go do your thing. There is nothing compelling you to come back. I don't have your dog hostage in the other room. I'm not telling you. You can leave. Choose not to, that's on you. So you came back. And that's what we're saying about Cassidy as well. Cassie, excuse me. That's what we're saying about Cassie, that she could have left,
right?
If she so choose.
Well,
but
let's be clear.
That's if I were Diddy's attorney.
And some of these people, by the way, did leave. They had employment where they were gone for a couple of years and came back afterwards, right? And so obviously leaving was a possibility.
Whatever happened to Fonzwell? What's his name?
Oh, Fonzworth Bentley. They're calling him, I think. And actually, we used to kick it with him back in the day. And it'll be interesting.
I bet you did.
It's not a
but let's be clear. Let's be clear. Even if you don't leave, right? People still can be charged for abusing you, even if you stay for the abuse. So the only way you can really argue this as a defense is this didn't happen. If it did happen, the person would have left. But you can't say, hey, the fact that they didn't leave means I got to keep raping them. All right. You can't do that. All right. But you can say, hey, I don't believe it. Would you believe it? Because I think that's what the argument they're going to make. It's unbelievable.
All right, everybody. All right, everybody. Right. Hold that thought, Ms. Turner. All right, everybody. You heard it here as we break down the Mia testimony. Are we convinced that this helped or harmed? We'll find out later in the show. Go ahead, Attorney Turner.
What I was going to say is, to Attorney Carter's point, I did employment law for a really long time. So granted, these allegations against Diddy are sensational. However, the reported cases are full of people who endured sexual harassment and sexual assault for a really long time. And so the psychology of it is complicated. I also have 3 letters to say, and I want to know if y'all are going to get it first thing. CMB. Yeah, y'all don't remember. So
Cash Money Brothers in New Jack City.
Yes. We have seen this play out in fiction, in the movies. Diddy is nothing other than Nino Brown, right? This whole case.
I wish you would.
If you've ever seen New Jack City,
break me for 12 years and I not do or say something. Sorry, ma'am, it's not working. Not for me. I do. Not for me, though. All right, everybody. If the likes aren't liking, I need your help a little bit.
Freak-offs.
Miss Turner, order in the court, please. We got to move on. All right. Please hit the like button if you've already hit that, because the likes aren't liking. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. If you already subscribed, be sure to hit the share button and invite some folks over to watch and learn about the law on the backs of these celebrities. Also, don't forget to jump down in the comments, because we love you in the comments. And don't forget to turn on your notifications, because Celebrity Court of Public Opinion is now on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9:30 Eastern. All right, next up, another very testy testimony or instance that happened is the judge. That's right, Judge Arson. How you say that judge's last name? Subramanian has rejected the defense call for mistrial. Yes, you heard me correctly. The defense definitely called for a mistrial. Their argument was that the prosecution implied Diddy was involved in the destruction of evidence linked to a firebombing incident, and that this constituted misconduct. The judge wasn't convinced, and the trial charges moved forward. All right, Attorney Jason Weiss, was this like a test the water type of move? Because I don't think anyone would have thought that at this stage of the trial that would be granted. What do you think what were the defense thinking when they, in fact, wanted to bring forward a mistrial?
I honestly don't know what they were thinking because I didn't see anything close. I mean, in order for a mistrial to be granted, there needs to be a serious procedural error that occurs that would allow for an error or an unfair trial. And that would usually be with it prejudicial evidence, misconduct by counsel, parties, witnesses, jurors. Again, we're not in the courtroom. We don't have video testimony of what's going on, but it really doesn't seem that anything even got close to that. Maybe gag orders needed to be done so people wouldn't speak outside the courtroom, or maybe the prosecutors are getting a little too aggressive in some of their stuff. But again, nothing that's been released that we could actually see warranted even close to a mistrial. So I'm not 100% sure what they were thinking. Maybe, and it's not even a Hail Mary because now wouldn't have even been the right time.
Okay, Attorney Carter, let's go to you real quick. I interpreted as the psychologically getting into the heads of the jury. Could this be a tactic to get into the heads of the jury? Because they're thinking, I haven't seen or heard anything, but for a lawyer to call for mistrial, maybe there's something that we're missing, and it forces them to tense up in their jobs as jurors.
Maybe. I would say that it was probably done to affect the jury, not necessarily much for the mistrial, but to basically stop the momentum of the prosecution. This is a big week for the prosecution. Witness after witness come in there talking about how Diddy doing a horrible thing. Let's take a time out for a couple of days, or a couple of hours, and deal with this procedural measure. It also, part of it is probably a long-term strategy to preserve for appeal. There are a lot of things that are coming out in this trial that on appeal, Diddy's going to be arguing were more prejudicial than probative. I mentioned the applesauce earlier. Why the heck do we need to know about his applesauce, right? And they're going to be making argument after argument that all these things that we're talking about, even, for instance, the grapes that we talked about here of Mia, which are very serious, he's not charged with those. And he's not charged with a criminal enterprise because he did these by himself. So they're trying to show that he's a bad guy. And they're going to go back on appeal if Diddy loses, and he is, and say, hey, they put in too much evidence in here that made my client not get a fair trial because even though he was innocent of the RICO, people just knew he was a jerk, and therefore it prejudiced his trial. So they're trying to set up that thing as far as you letting in too much information.
All right, Attorney Turner, Weiss just mentioned aggressive prosecution tactics or aggressive defensive tactics. How does a judge balance aggressive tactics against potential prejudice?
It's the judge's job to manage the courtroom. Some take that job seriously, and then some just let it kind of run amok. So the judge's job, right, is to ensure to the extent possible that there is no prejudicial misconduct in their courtroom that would result in a mistrial being awarded. The other thing that judges don't like to do is to be overturned on appeal. So the prosecutor or the defense was basically putting everybody on notice that, look, we're watching you, and this is what we intend to do if you guys foul it up. That's what I think. I think they were communicating a message to the prosecution. I don't know that it's going to work because I think the prosecution have a plan and they seem to be sticking to it quite consistently. But that's what I think it was. It was more for the lawyer and the judge, I think, than it was for the jurors.
For the jurors. All right, let's go to Person. Person. Thank you for the super chat. Person, I'm glad you put this in the chat because I think this all the time. Once a statement is made, even if the judge says to discard it, the jury already heard it. Counselors, tell me, how in the hell am I, as a juror who hears some very damaging stuff in court, no one denies it, right? No one denies it. They just say, strike that because it's not allowed. No one's denying it. Tell us in the court's mind, as lawyers who've been in these courts, what do you expect a jury member to forget that they just heard the person actually did something ugly? And even though you're not supposed to use it, how is it not going to have an effect on your decision in the courts?
It'll absolutely have an effect. I mean, you hear something, and even if you're told to disregard it, you're still not going to go ahead and forget it. You're still not going to disregard it. Now, if they ask the jurors later on, or they poll the jurors, and a decision was made because of something solely based on what the judge said you cannot consider when you go back into that courtroom, that could possibly lead to a mistrial. That could be a directed verdict where they take it out of the hands of the jury. But look, the judges will usually allow you to go ahead and the judge will strike it, or the judge will tell you to disregard it. You usually get 1 or 2 free shots at that. But if you start abusing it, the judge is going to call everybody in the chambers, and there's going to be some strict sanctions issued.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Anybody else want to share it on that?
I do want to sort of get a clarification here. Do you know that the actual statement that Diddy's attorneys are objecting to here was not any of the stuff we've heard so far? It was basically when the police chief from the LA Fire Department came, when the LA Fire Department guy came in, witness came in, and then Diddy's lawyers, the prosecution asked him, "Do you have fingerprints?" He said, "No, we don't have those on file. That was from 2012. And the prosecution asked, "Wait a minute, is it usual that you would throw out the records?" The defense immediately objected. And then they filed the motion of mistrial saying that this question insinuated that Diddy had everything destroyed. That's not what that question insinuates. I don't know how Diddy gets in the LAPD to get any evidence destroyed, right? And so this was a very weak example of all the things that have been said about Diddy that can be challenged, that I would challenge as a lawyer. This was not the one.
You know what's so interesting, Attorney Carter, is that our brains think completely the opposite. I definitely understood when that prosecution asked that question where he was going with it. I, in my head, immediately was going to, if he can make that gun disappear or make those charges disappear from that shootout in the club in New York City through his contacts with the police department, I'm pretty sure he has the same contacts in Los Angeles. So you and I, it's so interesting. If we examine the exact same things, we would come up with 2 different answers or conclusions. And that's good, because that's exactly how it's going to happen in the jury. All right, so let's keep this rolling on, because this next person, everyone wants to know, why is Kid Cudi's testimony so important? Kid Cudi's testimony is so important because it's an act of arson. And an act of arson is a RICO charge, right? If I'm not understanding, we're going to let the jury, hold your thought. We're going to let the lawyers get to that in just a minute. But next up, Kid Cudi took the stand and dropped the bombshell. In 2012, his Porsche was destroyed by this Molotov cocktail. He alleges Combs orchestrated the firebombing out of jealousy. Even more compelling, an arson expert confirmed the type of device used, which was gasoline and a liquor bottle, old school style. The defense, however, is calling it hearsay and irrelevant. Bailiff, take it away.
15 in the criminal case against Sean Diddy Combs. Let's take a look at what happened inside the courtroom. A Los Angeles police officer and fire arson investigator both took the stand to speak about a 2012 firebombing incident with Kid Cudi's car. Cassie Ventura's former stylist also testified. Investigators said a Molotov cocktail found in Kid Cudi's car appeared to have been used to ignite the car. However, it malfunctioned and didn't explode. However, had it done what it was supposed to, investigators said there would have been extensive damage. An investigator called the fire set inside Kid Cudi's car, quote, a targeted crime. Arson is among the acts listed in the racketeering conspiracy charges against Diddy. Another officer said he and his partner noticed a black Cadillac drive by 2 times as they were investigating the potential arson. They said they ran the plates on the second trip and found that it was registered to Bad Boy Records, which is, of course, Diddy's music label.
Ooh. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to you, Attorney Carter. What were you saying about arson?
I was going to agree with you that Kid Cudi, the reason they keep going back to this arson thing is that there's certain what called predicated offenses for a RICO charge. So it has to be a serious crime, that the underlying crime has to be serious to merit RICO consideration. If the 4 of us got together and decided we were going to run around and TP people's houses together, that might be a violation of local law and a waste of toilet paper, but it's not going to be a RICO charge. It has to be something serious, and arson is one of those things, as well as rape, kidnapping, all the things that they're bringing up. They're not talking about all the times that Diddy ran a red light, right, and jaywalked. It's got to be serious crime. So they're really focusing on this arson thing because it's a predicate offense to the RICO.
Now this attorneys is where I feel like this is so freaking weak, because there is absolutely to date this is without direct evidence. This is hearsay, she say, think say. There's no direct evidence. There's no direct evidence. And if you're building a RICO case and the foundation you land is this freaking flimsy with no direct evidence, attorneys, what am I missing? And why are us taxpayers spending $25 million for no direct evidence?
Again, I think the RICO was a stretch, right? You need 2 acts in a 10-year period. So if they're going to try to do arson, and then the other one looks like they're going to try to do maybe kidnapping, because it could be arson, it could be fraud, it could be bribery, it could be. So you got to have 2 of those in a 10-year period, and I just don't see the RICO. I see the other stuff. I see the domestic violence. I see the not being a good person. I see eating applesauce on hamburgers. Right? Those are all crimes against humanity. But at the same time, I do not see RICO.
All right.
And as of yet, and I will tell you this: you pop it into ChatGPT. Has the prosecution proved RICO yet in the P. Diddy? And it's going to tell you not yet.
Attorney Turner, have you seen RICO yet?
I see the elements of RICO getting planted. I think that they haven't carried the day yet, but they keep giving enough witnesses that have circumstantial evidence about this Kid Cudi thing. I mean, I think you're right. Like, if they're hanging their hat on this, and this is the whole thing, but this is supposed to be an 8 to 10 week trial, right? We're only on day 15. So other stuff is coming, but they want to show 2 main things with this. One, it wasn't Diddy, the man, that did it. It was Diddy, the mogul, through Combs Enterprises, that committed the arson to get to the racketeering. That's what they're trying to show. And so the fact that there are employees,
they haven't done it.
Well, but what they're trying to do, and I think they're on the right track, the fact that multiple employees are testifying about, like, he went to pick the woman up at her house, right, to drive her to Cudi's, right? And because Cassie called and told them about the cheating. And so this whole thing keeps being woven to show that all of these people purportedly had jobs to file papers, make phone calls, and all the rest of it. But in truth, they existed to fuel this criminal enterprise, and the criminal enterprise engaged in crimes. And here are examples of the crimes. It's trafficking the prostitutes. It's the committing the arson. It's all of these things. And I think that they have the jurors curious about what else is coming, because it's so sensational. And all of these people who got a paycheck from Combs Enterprises are testifying that they were aware of these crimes, and they somehow contributed to either their cover-up, or they were kind of on the fringes of them occurring.
Okay, Attorney Carter, do you see RICO?
I do, actually. And here's why. It's not the Cudi thing. The Cudi thing, I agree with you, is absolutely weak. Although, Your Honor, it's interesting because just a minute ago, you told me how you could draw an inference that Diddy had the power to make the evidence disappear. A lot of people in the jury are going to be just like you and think Diddy has this power. So if you tell them he broke into someone's house, all right, and he had the ability to make the evidence disappear, they can make that next leap. But here's why I think they have the RICO case. Remember, the RICO case requires you have bad acts and you have more than one person. If one person just goes around on the crime spree, you don't have it. And here's why they got the bad acts. Remember, we're going to get to in a minute, but the kidnapping they did, or when the one woman was held, and I think it was Mia, was held and given the continual lie detectors. She named one of Diddy's henchmen, the head of security, by name, and said, he's the one who held me there. Now we got a group act. Until then, we've just had Diddy running around being a one-man crime spree. Almost impressive. Okay. But now we got his henchmen, head of security, calling in.
Stay there right there with me 1 second, because I'm loving this. I'm actually learning something. But ask me this. Like I said before, as lawyers, you guys can hear the case being built. The jury are not lawyers. It's someone speaking to the jury and saying, listen, to prove RICO, you have to build this, this, and this. Because if somebody's not explaining this to the jury, I'm sure what you just said, they're not understanding. And in their head, ain't no RICO being proven.
That's called a closing argument. So they're going to present their entire case, and then they're going to bring it all together at the end. They're going to remind them of the elements of the case, and they're going to say, remember this, remember that, remember this. And that's how they're going to bring it all home.
I think if I was a prosecution right now, because I'm looking at all the traction that's going on the internet, going on from the legal experts saying that they aren't convinced that they have done a good job of not defining, but making people believe RICO has happened. I would be, in every person that I put on the stand, I would be explaining what RICO is, because the majority of the regular Americans do not see or feel any type of RICO is going on. Do they see jealousy? Yes. Do they see domestic violence? Yes. Do they see a power-hungry guy? Yes. Do they see a guy using intimidation? Yes. But they do not, and I still will say this right now, the regular guy on the street does not see RICO. They see a powerful, rich black man playing in a candy store with his money and his influence, and he's jealous. That's what they see.
I don't disagree, but that's actually how all trials work. The lawyer can't get up there and testify and say this is the rule of law. Now, who will do that is a judge. I went ahead and drafted up some judicial instructions. So at the end of this, before he sends the jury out, he will say,
he'll tell them.
And
who goes over that? Who goes over those judicial instructions with the
judge?
Jury?
The judge. He'll write them out, and they can look at them and they go back.
The judge will read
that's
it.
Good to know.
The judge will say,
if I had to have confidence of the jury,
no,
I just wouldn't have it.
No,
I mean, I would say that Diddy's walking free soon.
The judge will say, as to count one RICO, in order to prove RICO, you must prove that there were 2 acts in a 10-year period with more than one person. And the acts need to include blah, 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 blah.
Okay,
and
guys, so there is a point in which this is described.
They are called jury instructions. It is always when the case is over, the judge then sits there and goes through the jury instructions.
So can jealousy be legally considered as a motive in property crime?
Jealousy is a motive.
It's a motive.
It's a motive to committing crimes. So it goes to state of mind is what they call it. But jealousy on its own is not a crime.
Okay. But it can be used to, All right, everybody, we're learning tonight. Be sure to hit that like button because the likes aren't liking. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. If you're already subscribed, be sure to hit the share button, invite some friends over, and learn a little bit about the law like we're learning tonight off the backs of these crazy celebrities that are always in trouble with the law. Don't forget to turn on your notifications. And as always, we love your spirited comments in the chat. Keep them coming. All right, next up, Capricorn Clark's allegations. Capricorn Clark, damn, how many assistants did he have? Another former assistant and executive testifies that Combs kidnapped her at gunpoint in 2011 after learning about Cassie's relationship with Kid Cudi. Her testimony includes threats, coercion, and sustained fear during her time working for him. Everybody's scared of him, my Lord. These allegations begin to sound more like a criminal enterprise than individual incidents, and maybe that's exactly what the prosecution is trying to do. I'm going to go to you, Attorney Turner. What legal definitions qualify an incident as kidnapping in federal and state law? Because I want to know exactly, if my boss kidnapped me on Tuesday with a gun, I don't care how scared I am of him. I'm not going back to work on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday.
And you are now hired as Diddy's lead attorney.
I'm just saying, think about this. By 2011, we got a ton of Cassie incidents. If you're an assistant, if you're his executive, you know that crap is going on. You got another assistant that's working in the cubicle next to you. He is already raped 10 times. Y'all got me messed up. Why is it that everybody that's working there that he has physically assaulted, kidnapped, held at gunpoint, none of them could get away?
You got to check your privilege, Your Honor. That's what I think. And Attorney Weiss, right? Because here's the thing. If my boss shows up to pick me up in my house with a gun, I think he's crazy enough to use it, right? And if everybody in the industry that I want to work in knows me as being his assistant and they think he's sane, and all of a sudden, like, I can't find a job doing what I love to do. So, like, what am I going to go work in McDonald's instead simply because of that? Like, I think these people were doing the best they could, and I think they were terrified out of their mind. The other thing is, though, this, right? You got to remember, Diddy was also super charming. So the monster that we know, I suspect, did not show up every day.
Pick me up at my house with a gun and kidnap me. I don't care how super charming you are.
He got a Birkin bag and an apology. And he said, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm just so in love with Cassie. I don't know what to do. And I'm really sorry. And so then the next thing you know, she's back at work.
If I could take this gavel and come through this screen.
And here's the thing is, Your Honor, help me out with this, because I'm not really sure. Are you saying that you don't believe them, that none of this happened?
No, I'm definitely not saying that. I'm just saying if it was me and my boss kidnapped me at gunpoint, I'm scared as hell. I don't know if I'm going to go back to see my 5-year-old son or my husband. I am not going back to work for another 7 years with that nut. I am also not going back to work because I've had to clean up those nasty ass rooms. I know what he's doing to Cassie. I hear what's going on in the streets in general because I'm right there working with him. You're like, you know everything that's going on in his life. I just don't know that I could have put up with all of this craziness, especially when he pulls the guns and kidnaps me. Nope.
No, and I totally get that.
Check your privilege. He threatened to unalive a lot of people. So
okay, but he can't unalive all of them and get away with it. Nope.
Well, but here's the thing, and I totally get your point, Your Honor. But the question is this, though: if you're the jury, none of that. These people aren't on trial. The only question is, do you believe what they told you? Even if they were stupid for going back, even if they shouldn't have gone back, it's not relevant. The only real question is, do you believe them? And if you don't believe them, you say, because no one would do that, that's fine. But otherwise, if you believe them, it really doesn't matter why they went back. If they went back, why they should, if they were silly for going back, if they were smart for going back, they went back, this happened.
JP Mills says, Al can't critique until you're in that situation. The hell I can't. That's what your parents teach you. No, the hell I can't. That's what your parents teach you, the difference between good and bad, right and wrong. If a stranger comes up to you, my mother used to tell me as a child, if a stranger comes up to you and offers you candy, you say no. And you say no. If your stranger comes up and say, I'm going to take you home, you say no. They're basic things that you learn that you just got to exercise.
A stranger's never taken you home? A stranger's never taken you home?
Look, not as a child, but as an adult, I might.
No, but you gave the perfect example, though, Your Honor. The kid, we all told our kids don't take candy from strangers. If your kid does take candy from a stranger, we still got to prosecute that stranger. Even if we told your kid not to do it.
He said that we don't have a right to critique.
You can have opinions.
We do have a right to critique. That's what we do for a living. We critique. I mean, as lawyers, that's what you do is you critique. You give your legal opinion on stuff. You critique it. We all can critique stuff. I mean, you don't have to like my critique, but we are allowed to critique shit.
But you do have to check your privilege because let us be clear.
If you tell me to check my privilege one more time, I'm not checking shit.
Penis privilege. He's only beaten women. He's only
penis privilege.
Penis
what
privilege.
What in the world are you talking about?
I'm talking about you over there with your penis privilege, judging these women who are in these situations. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, listen, we're not gonna make this a man against a woman thing because I know I'll never win. But let me tell you this: you got a privilege bigger than my privilege. You owned it for JJ. That's a privilege.
Well, let's not say it's bigger, Your Honor. Let's say it's better, but it's not bigger. All right, hopefully. Pray for me.
I haven't had 250 men, so
I have always thought this, and I know I'm getting off the case, but I have always thought women are the most powerful human beings. Period. You guys have the gold, you have the pot at the end of the rainbow. Like, what in the world? Okay, we're getting
like Willy Wonka. They got the golden ticket.
Okay, really quickly though. What does a witness's work history with the accused? How does a witness? That's what I was also trying to get to too. How does a witness's work history with the accused affect their credibility? I wanted to get to that because that's what I was building up to. Like, if you say that you worked there 3 years and you had this incident, I can understand it may have taken you some time to get out, but these two witnesses have a very long history with him, meaning they accepted a check from him, they accepted privileges from him, they had a space of influence, like you said, Attorney Turner, obviously from being his assistant, they had access from him. How credible are they when now there's a trial and now they want to jump on the let's fry him list?
I think the credibility does take a little bit of a hit, right? They might believe, they might not understand, they'll believe, but they probably don't understand, like we were talking here, right? I believe that she was the victim of grapes over a period of time. I believe that's that, but it doesn't make sense to me why she would keep going back, and that's going to take away some of the credibility. It's not going to prove that he did not do what he's accused of doing, but it might just put some questions in your head, and it's kind of like a smoke and mirror, right? Don't look over here. Listen, she's not credible over here. Maybe Diddy isn't as bad. Maybe he's not a RICO guy. He's just a domestic V guy. And I look, I think he's going to be found guilty of the lesser charges, and he's going to spend some time as a resident of Fed Club, and he will appeal. But at the same time, I have a problem right now, the way they're laying it out. I don't see the RICO. Yes, but again.
Okay, Jason, you said something that once again tonight that I thought was very poignant. And also a couple of people in the chat have said this too. And I'm starting to be nauseated by the prosecution with these overlapping narratives. Attorney Carter and Attorney Turner, tell me, does the prosecution risk confusing the jury with these multiple overlapping narratives? Because they all seem the same. It seems like the same picture. It seems. Can this be confusing to a jury?
It can be. I mean, you always run that risk, right? We talked about, for instance, that you have the jury instructions, because the jury now is going to go back and try to fit 8 weeks of testimony and see if it meets each of these things the judge said it has to do, right? That makes it hard. And at some point, a jury might say, hey, I'm going to go home. I'm done with this. So I agree with you 100% that you run the risk. But the challenge they have is, because of the arguments that you've been making earlier, Your Honor, they have to show more than just Cassie saying this happened to me. They have to show, they have to have another person come and say this happened to me, another person saying it happened to me, because people are not going to believe Cassie necessarily, because she stayed there that long. She set up,
and she just won like $40 million.
Exactly, right? She got her money, so they're going to need all these people.
All right, well, you're making sense to me now. All right,
but I have a question. But I have a question based on that. Why do all of these victims, people, witnesses have the same? Treated like garbage, go back. Treated like garbage, go back. Treated by why? Yeah. Why? And I think jurors might say, I don't know why are they all going back? That might be a question.
I still say the same too, and I think that's the part where I was getting at being confusing. But before Shaitan tells me to check my privilege, I'm gonna.
Well, I mean, the other thing is that the prosecution is trying to prove a pattern, right? And they're doing that. That's why there's these overlapping narratives, because they want that pattern to be proven. And the other thing, I won't say check your privilege again, but the thing to be mindful of is credibility, like weak credibility, generally is related to what the person's lying about, right? And so the fact that they're stupid enough or abused enough and have no other choices and have Stockholm syndrome, and so they keep going back, right? That may question their credibility about how to keep a job, right? Oh, yay, we got another super chat.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren.
But it doesn't necessarily question their credibility about whether or not he was the maniac that was doing all of these things, right? Because no one has proven an incentive for them to lie about that. Like in some respects, their incentive would be to protect him because they worked for him so long and they got a paycheck, right? But the fact that now everybody who's coming out seems to be finally able to tell their truth. They're having like emotional experiences on the stand to the extent that people probably have crisis intervention services on the phone, making sure that they're all right. There was something going on here.
Yeah, but see, this is the deal, Tim. This is the deal. I still think that the prosecution is missing the mark. I think they're missing the mark. I feel like what the regular Americans feeling like, I feel like they're making a great case of showing that this was an evil guy doing bad things, a mean guy who was jealous, who you know, beating women up, taking it at his will, against their will and stuff like that. But and of course, all of that is 110% against the law, but that's not what you're asking me to prosecute him for. And I think what the prosecutors are going to have to do, and if they're going to take this strategy and lay in the foundation, they got to get gangster with it. And they've got to give me something that I can sink my teeth in, not legally, but, you know, according to public opinion, that I can sink my teeth in and say, oh, this mother, oh, he is an enterprise. He is a calculated, low down, dirty enterprise mogul that tricked us all these years with great PR and marketing to make us believe and think otherwise. Because we live in a time of gangster politics, gangster law. Our president is the biggest gangster in the world right now, and we use him as our example of how and what it should be, even though it's all wrong. So you've got to really put the bullet in the gun and shoot it as a prosecutor, and not put a bullet in the gun and load it, because we don't believe that. We're not believing it. If we got a president that can go out and sexually assault women, go out and rob banks in daylight and do all of this stuff, and is still walking around and is the president, then your case is basically very soft right now.
And I agree with you 100%, Your Honor.
What you were just saying made me think of a Master P song, or at least came from No Limit. It wasn't a Diddy song, but you're like, bend over, show me what you're working with. Like, this is not working for you, right? So you want to see it all, and you want it now.
Right. You got to do it now, because let me tell you something. I've learned this in the media. Once the narrative gets built, the American people will speak. They don't want the facts. They don't want the legal, they don't want the legal way. They want to know, what they think and have heard is true or not, right? And right now, what you're telling them is true. They're not convinced.
But various people are going to say various things. I mean, B2B Good just said they've proven over the last few days of him running a criminal enterprise.
Yeah,
so
but I'm
saying B2B Good was on the jury, B2B Good would say,
right, that would be a check. But like I said, there's a difference. If you just do a common poll of is Diddy a criminal or is he a freak, which box are you going to think they're going to check? Is B Diddy a federal criminal, or is he a federal domestic violence? Which one are you think they're going to pick? And if they're picking and checking the other one and not the first one, then the prosecution has more to do. All right, we can argue this all night. Let's keep it moving, because you guys are. Deonte Nash observations. Celebrity stylist Deonte Nash gave the court an insider view, testifying that he saw Combs physically abuse Cassie Ventura and that Cassie resisted participating in freak-offs, which he described as orchestrated group sex events. He also claimed that Combs threatened to release explicit footage of Cassie, adding blackmail to an already dark narrative. Now, I do need for someone to explain to me, and let's go to our resident female first. What was the point of this guy's testimony?
So, in all candor, I was distracted by Danielle Cameron saying we were missing facts, and I was reading her chat, and so I didn't even hear what you said.
We talked about Deonte Nash. He basically said, he testified that he saw Combs physically abuse Cassie. And he also said that, he could witness that Cassie resisted participating in the freak-offs. I just want to know, why was it so important for celebrity stylist Deonte Nash to be on this stand in the first 3 weeks?
I'm not sure about the timing, but the reason that he's there is to prove coercion, right? And because he's testifying to the fact that she didn't want to do it. So the defense tried to portray her as a lovesick girl willing to do anything that her man wanted her to do. And it was all free will. And he's like, no, you need to understand this girl didn't want to do it. She was forced. And that is part of the case they're trying to create against.
Okay, so let me ask all the attorneys this, because I got to put my hat on. Okay, now, am I going to believe, as a jury member, the text messages that the jury was shown from Cassie saying that she loves the freak-offs, or am I going to believe her hairstylist who gets paid by Cassie to do her hair? Who am I going to believe? The text message from Cassie saying that I love the freak-offs, or someone who is paid by Cassie to do her hair saying that she didn't want to do the freak-offs?
That's a wonderful argument. That's exactly what the defense will say. Let me tell you what the prosecution is going to say. Okay. Yeah, at first she loved the freak-offs. She then changed her mind, and he didn't accept that. They'll say those were at two different times. All right? Yeah. But the thing that this guy is testifying for, once again, was a sex trafficking charge where you need to prove that she was coerced into doing this. The blackmail is the big thing, not just that the fact he beat her, but that the blackmail, because you have to have some reason to say, hey, she did this against her will.
Got it.
Now, from a larger standpoint, let me give you my theory of the case, and it's very simple, all right? Diddy is not a racketeer. When you think of a criminal enterprise, it's not, okay, a record label that makes millions of dollars selling records and then has occasional freak-offs, all right? Normally, a RICO, a criminal enterprise, is the mob. The mob doesn't have any legitimate businesses. They're not selling records on the side and doing bad stuff on the side. That's their main business. That freak-offs was not Diddy's main business. They didn't build that off just freak-offs, right? And so it's really, they're trying to shoehorn a RICO charge where it really wouldn't belong normally. That's why all this stuff that you say that you're wondering why they bring all this other stuff up. They have to. The other charge, by the way, is the Mann Act, hiring sex workers across state line. Something that has happened at every bachelor party ever. All right, half of people in the jury have done that. They're going to have to try to get these people to convict Diddy and send him to life in prison on a RICO charge that is kind of tenuous and on doing something that everybody does at the bachelor party. So what they need to do is paint him as a monster so that you Al Capone him. Remember, Al Capone, we didn't get him on murder and all that. You know what they got him on? Tax evasion. He didn't fill out the right W-2, right? This is what they're trying to do here. They said, we got these technical things we can get you on. We got to show that you're such a monster that the jury is going to want to put you away for tax evasion.
Okay, let's get to some of the comments. Millennia NC said, why couldn't Cassie like some of the freak-offs and said no to others? Ooh, that's a slippery slope. Precious Mahogany says, Al, do you know what Stockholm Syndrome is? Of course I do. But don't mean everybody has it, sweetheart. I work in education. Not every kid that does not pay attention has ADHD. And they always want to say we Black people have a lot of ADHD. No, we don't. You're just not saying anything that's of interest to me. And I'm not paying attention to you. That does not mean that I have ADHD. Okay, keep going. JP Mills, I can see Diddy guilty of trafficking. Okay, I can see the guilty trafficking. I think they proved the trafficking pretty good. Okay, Colette Davis said coercion is clear to me. That's Diddy's MO, use of coercion. Okay, so you see that, Colette. Pink Goddess says there's something about Capricorn Clark that raises reasonable doubt. I agree. That's why I brought it up. Brian and Simone Ellis Adams says, Who doesn't confide in their hairstylist, their barber, or their bartender? They all do. Let me tell you, hairstylists, makeup artists, drivers, and security are the closest to the talent, but that wasn't my question. My question was, as a jury members don't know the inner making ups of a celebrity's life. If you know, you know, a hairstylist, a makeup artist, an assistant, a driver, and security are the closest. They know everything about that celebrity's life and whoever works in the house with the celebrity. But a regular Joe does not know that. So are you going to believe Cassie's text that the jury was giving in paper form? Or are you going to believe a hairstylist just thinking as a jury who doesn't know the importance that a hairstylist have it? All right, let's keep it moving. Last piece of the show that I wanted to go over is the most damaging testimony for the defense. Many have defined as Mia's allegation of sexual assault is one. Number two, the most damaging testimony for the defense is Kid Cudi's arson testimony. And the third most damaging, they're saying, is Capricorn Clark's kidnapping testimony. Lawyers on the panel tonight, of those three, which to you were the most damaging, meaning the most legally and culturally devastating testimonies in Combs' defense?
I mean, I think they're equal opportunity offenses for the reasons
I need you
that
to pick one, Attorney Turner, please.
Well, I mean, I will, but you got to remember what Attorney Carter said, right?
I understand. I understand,
serious
Attorney
crimes, and
Turner.
so well,
I can imagine that your kids always have the best explanation for you when you tell them to do something, because they get it from their mama. Pick one.
I'll pick kidnapping. I'll pick Capricorn's kidnapping.
So you felt, why did you think that was the most damaging for Diddy?
Well, it goes to the RICO because it's a serious crime, and she sold it based on everything that I've seen in the news, right? She testified she was held up at gunpoint. She testified to several facts that had already been mentioned by other people, and so that gave more credibility to her testimony for me. And so that, I thought, was a really strong piece of evidence against Diddy.
All right, let's go, Attorney Weiss. Which one of the three do you think was the most damaging? Kid Cudi, Mia, or Capricorn Clark?
Out of those three, I'm going to agree with Attorney Turner, and I'm going to go with the abduction at gunpoint, because we heard about the sexual assault and the grape, and we heard all about that with Cassie, and I think that was the most compelling. So I think Mia's kind of not as much. Somebody kidnapped at gunpoint, that's something new that we haven't heard.
Let me ask you something. So you're saying that this is a bigger deal to you than the testimony of Mia, who's saying that on multiple times she was raped over the course of 10 plus years?
Yeah, because we heard that from Cassie, and I think Cassie was more compelling, more got the love, got the attention, got the emotions of the jury. So we heard it again, and it's kind of like, I think the jury was kind of like, okay, but we heard it from Cassie. Now we're bringing a firearm into it. I think it's something new. It's like, wait, so he did this to Cassie, and now we got someone held at gunpoint and kidnapped? Oh, man, he's really bad.
All right, Turner. All right, Carter.
I'm going to make you unanimous. And I want to piggyback on what Attorney Weiss just said. It's one thing to, in a dark room with just two people, to do something. It's totally another to pull a gun on one person and say, hey, I need you to bring a third person into this situation so I can whip them while I'm holding the gun on you. That's almost some John Wick stuff. All right. It's crazy to think that. And once again, they're trying to make sure that we put this monster away for tax evasion. All right. And so you got to show him in the worst possible light. And this is pretty bad. All right. Think about it. You call one woman and say, call your girlfriend over so I can whoop her. That's crazy.
Okay. All right. Last question of the evening. The most damaging testimony for the prosecution. Is it, number one, the witness's credibility under fire? The defense highlights continued professional relationships with Combs after the alleged abuse, which may confuse jury. Is it two, the speculative testimonies? Many claims lack smoking gun evidence, relying on assumption and emotional context, like Kid Cudi. Is that damaging? Or is it 3? The most damaging so far is the RICO overreach. Legal scholars say the prosecution might struggle to unify these claims under a single racketeering enterprise. All right, Legal Beagles, what do you think is the biggest issue for the prosecution? Witness credibility, speculative testimonies, or the RICO overreach? Let's start with you, Attorney Carter.
I'm going to have to go with door number 3, Monty, the potential overreach. I mentioned it before, and this is really the issue is, I'll give you an example. Some people in the chat said that, it's an criminal enterprise because he used corporate funds. I think that was even in the clip we saw. He used corporate funds to fund this. That doesn't make it a RICO enterprise. So give me an example. If I were to take my corporate credit card, I have my own company, and were to buy a ticket to fly to somewhere and to commit some horrible crime, that's not RICO. It has to be someone else in that organization who helped me with this, and that we got together for a common purpose. And all these people are going to say, hey, I wasn't here to help you great people to have freak offs. I was here to make my way in the music industry, and you just happen to rig me into this. This isn't a common purpose.
Attorney Turner?
See, that's where I disagree a little bit with Attorney Carter. And I think that also explains why people stayed, right? Because when you put manipulation, intimidation, and coercion, combine it with sex, drugs, and rock and roll, right? And factor into it that they themselves committed crimes, right? We already have one person who had immunity for testifying. So they might be thinking, I know I flushed drugs down the toilet. I did this, I did that. I can't get out because he's more powerful and he could implicate me. One of the things that hasn't come out yet, but has been reported in the media, is that he had videotape on people. He allegedly blackmailed Cassie and told her parents he was going to release videotapes. And so I think that the credibility concerns are balanced by the fact that, as they indicated, they were getting paid to do crimes.
All right, Attorney Weiss, wrap it up for us.
What did I miss? What's funny, Attorney Carter?
Christine R. We're going to have to bring a RICO or at least the restraining order.
Corporate Amex and see if you get a RICO. Okay.
Wow.
Jason got some faithful ass fans.
Okay.
Weiss, tell me what is the most damaging for the prosecution right now?
I think it's the RICO overreach. I really do. I think if they didn't go for the RICO and they went for other charges and all of that, I think we'd be finished and he'd be starting his sentence by now. I think the RICO overcharge, again, at this point, it's massively an overreach. That could change in the next 3 weeks. We don't know. But right now, I think the problem is everybody is saying, where's the RICO? And we're all
I think that's what I said.
the RICO.
That's right. I think that's why I said earlier that you have to get ahead of what the PR campaign is. The PR campaign right now is deeply trenched in people's mind that it was an overreach. We don't see anything. We have the attention span of a gnat. After this week, we don't give a hoot unless it is a smoking gun with pictures, videos, and audio. We are not convinced that Diddy should be charged with RICO. We're not convinced. And if you don't do something within the next 7 days to convince us of that, we're not going to pay attention to the end of this trial, the majority of people, because somebody else is going to do something stupid and something else is going to come up and it's going to distract people. All right, everybody.
And he's going to slip right on out.
And he's going to slip right on
out. But I think it's coming because the reason I did the Nino Brown reference earlier in the show is because if you recall, his father worked for the original Nino Brown, Frank Lucas, right? And so
he get fired or had some running or something.
He got murdered, but or he got unalived. But the thing is that I think what's going to come out if this gets really messy and they're going to try to say he was, sexually assaulted as a child and this is all a function of the fact that he had these bad influences. I think he was reared in how to run a criminal enterprise. That's what I think. And I think that he learned how to do the music industry.
Was he reared with the baby oil? I mean, come on. So let's.
Ah,
Oh Lord, that's it. That's
hold
it.
on.
That was improvised.
I see where you're going with it. I see the strong relationship with his mother. She allegedly used to be a you know what back in the day. I see all that, but no, we have to look at the evidence. He went to private school. He lived a privileged life. He did not hang around the block like everybody else. He always was hanging around more privileged people than not privileged people. I can understand if he was at his daddy's side watching this as a kid growing up, but that is not his experience. And if you want to say it came from his DNA, that could be the case.
Well, no,
all right, everybody, hold on. All right, we're over time, Miss Turner. My goodness. Lady, if you told us in 1998 that the man behind Bad Boys Records, the platinum selling mogul, the fashion icon, and the one who made us dance would one day be defending himself against allegations of kidnapping, arson, and sexual assault, we might have called you crazy. But guess what? Here we are. Tonight wasn't about headlines. It was about pattern. It was about power and protection, about how systems, both legal and cultural, bend for those with status and sometimes break the moment the cameras turn off. But let me ask you this. Can a man be guilty in the culture and innocent in the courtroom? Can we separate art from accountability? Or is this the trial a final reminder that the same charisma that built an empire may have hidden a kingdom of control? In the court of public opinion, you don't just watch the case, you are the jury. Jump down in the chat and let me know, if you had to vote today as a jury member, would you convict P. Diddy Combs of the charges that he's been charged of? All right? I'm Al Reynolds and I'm your judge, and this court is now adjourned.